Hey, Alison, how are you?
Do you feel like
I think I'm okay. No, but you make it on care about that. Okay. So I'm gonna have her just double check and make sure we're showing on everything. We are live, my friend. Oh my God, Marvin, I'm so excited. I've been
No,
waiting for this all day.
I'm excited about this too. It should be good.
Yes, I'm excited. Um, I'm excited for this, and I thank you so much for just being you. Like, I can't wait for us to dig in and really just go in on just how amazing you are and all the fabulous, spectacular things that you do in life. So, everyone, welcome to They Say Woo Woo. We're excited. This is my first official podcast launch. So I'm so excited to be able to sit and talk to someone I admire and adore and just think is just absolutely fabulous. Marvin Pierre, the founder and CEO of 8 Million Stories. He is a great friend of mine. We have been building a relationship for a couple years now. So I'm excited that he said yes. I'm honored to have him as my first guest because I believe in his mission. And like I promised when I started They Say, I would get like-minded individuals, people that I feel connect with what They Say represents, and people that I want to share my platform with, and people that have such great voices and just help them amplify their voice that much more. So I'm excited to have Marvin here. I thank him for saying yes to me. I know we're early. We're about 2-3 minutes early, Marvin. So I'm gonna give a little time to get some people on. But I'm excited. It was a busy day, so so I'm excited to be on here with him and just kind of plug into what he has going on and understanding his They Say and then understanding his journey. Um, and so yeah, so I'm gonna give us a couple more minutes and I'll be right back. Okay, cool. Okay, Marvin, I'm gonna give it maybe like 1 to 2 minutes. You know me, I like being early. Oh, Marvin, you owe somebody his name Jared a cigar. He said, "Let's go." You owe him a cigar.
They said I owe them a cigar.
Yeah, he said you owe him a cigar, and I quote.
Oh, who was that?
Let me see. Hold on. I think it was Jared.
Oh, oh yeah. He be. I definitely. Yeah. Something.
That's pretty funny. So
Jared's with Emerging 100.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, cool.
Doing some good work.
Oh,
somebody have on the show at some point.
Okay, well, you are like my co-producer, and you just don't realize it. So usually, when you tell me I need to know somebody, I'll be like, "Okay, Marvin, tell me who I need to know." So I think we're ready to go. Somebody, we're good on everything. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure we were streaming from YouTube and LinkedIn. So she says we're good to go. So I'm ready to go. So like I said, welcome to They Say. Super excited to have my brother, my friend, my fellow global community change agent extraordinaire, the legend himself, Marvin Pierre, on here. I'm so honored to be here with you and just have this conversation with you. It's so necessary and it's going to be so intentional that I don't know. I'm just like bubbling over with emotion because I'm so excited about it. So I'm going to get into your bio. I won't read the whole thing, but I'm going to get into a little bit of your bio because I think it's pretty dope. And I want people to know who you are and what you do and why I'm just such a huge advocate, and not just an advocate, but a fan and a sister and an admirer of everything that 8 Million Stories has going on. I've had the pleasure of knowing Marvin for a couple years now. And one thing, I was talking to someone yesterday about him. I am huge on consistency. And one thing about Marvin is what you see here, you'll see in person. He never changes. He is so steady. And people like to do business with people and not just do business, but build relationships with people who are consistent in who they are. So I don't mind giving him access to any resource I have, opening up my personal and professional network to him, because one thing I know is he's consistent in who he is, and this is who he is. So I honor him for that. I thank him for saying yes. I thank Bree for allowing you to get on here and spend some time with me. So I just thank you, Marvin. And real quick, so Marvin came from Wall Street, which I'll let him kind of tell his story, which I think is so dope. But Marvin came from Wall Street. He started 8 Million Stories. And it's a nonprofit that helps children, right, that prison to pipeline, and keeping them out of prison. And he's very, very intentional. He's made some major national and global impact. So I'll allow him to kind of share his story. But I'm honored to have you here, Marvin. Tell the people what I already know about how wonderful you are.
Appreciate you having me, Alison, and congrats on the kickoff of the podcast. I feel that this will be one of many great opportunities for you to uplift some of the amazing change makers that we have in Houston that I know will really be able to share a lot of the good work that they're doing also. But again, good evening, everyone. My name is Marvin Pierre. I'm the co-founder and executive director of 8 Million Stories. We are a local nonprofit here in Houston that works to disrupt the school to prison pipeline by working with youth and young adults who we consider to be at promise between the ages of 9 to 24, providing them with support in education, workforce development, and personal development that ultimately puts them on a path towards post-secondary or career pathways that help them to break generational curses. As you could probably tell from my accent, I'm not from Houston, originally from New York City, proud community of South Jamaica, Queens, which is where I was raised, and really continue to uplift and carry a lot of the values that that were instilled in me when I was growing up in that community. And so had a chance to go back home this past week, and it was great to see the community and a lot of people that saw me growing up, and just how proud they are of my progress and the impact that I'm making. So excited to talk about the work that we're doing, and hope it inspires many of our visitors today.
I'm excited too. So I didn't even introduce myself. I was so excited to see you. So I'm Alison McFarland, founder and CEO of Alison McFarland Inc. And I specialize in elevating brands. And this is what they say an AMI came out at a very, I would say a very pivotal point in my life where I had to make some really big decisions quickly. So this is how They Say has come to life. And They Say really is a platform that I am using to share and amplify voices, because we all have that They Say experience where people have something to say and they really don't know anything about us, but they continue to have something to say. So it's a They Say experience. So with They Say, we're going to just dive into thought leadership. We're going to dive in with entrepreneurs. We're going to dive in with CEOs, just different people in the community that are doing just great things, that have had adversity and and continue to have adversity, but they don't let it stop them. So Marvin had to be my first guest because he's like the king of faith. So I needed him to share his journey and his faith with us to how he got to, I call this particular episode, The Road Less Traveled. That's one of my favorite poems by Robert Frost. So I've chose that particular title because I really feel that sums up his journey, and he's really just getting started. So off the top, Marvin, how did you get from Wall Street to nonprofit space? Like, help me understand that.
Yeah, it was a very, I don't think I ever dreamed that I would be doing what I'm doing now. So, when I grew up in New York, my parents are two Haitian immigrant parents. They're Haitian immigrants, and they came to this country looking for better opportunities for myself and my 3 brothers. And, when you grow up in a community like South Jamaica, Queens, your purpose is to really how do I get to greener pastures, right? How do I find success and ultimately accomplish the American dream? And so for me, I was really active in sports, and also was a fairly decent student. I don't think I was a student, but school took its course on me. I didn't really start to excel in school until probably 6th or 7th grade. Okay. And in high school, my sophomore year in high school, I got an opportunity to go to this prestigious prep school in Cape Cod, Massachusetts called Tabor Academy.
Okay.
Pretty much changed my life, but also exposed me to what many would call the opportunity gap. And so here I go, being this inner city kid from Jamaica, Queens, going into this predominantly white school where, my roommates and, the students that I were going in class with were well-to-do, right? So their parents, were well off, and it was a very big culture shock for me because I didn't come from that. And so having to not only adjust to that social transition, but also the academic rigor was much more intense. So I didn't know much until I got to Tabor, and I was like, oh, this is something different. So
I have a question for you. Let's pause on that because I'm huge on exposure and I'm huge on access. So I am from San Diego. I went to a predominantly, I was the only minority. So out of 250 students, there were probably 3 Black kids, and I was one of them. I went to school in Del Mar. I know being from San Diego, it's kind of diverse, but not really. So that was a culture shock for me. So let's talk about that transition, being from Jamaica, Queens, right? And then going into an environment where you're at a prestigious boarding school. Like, what was your first day like? And what kind of mindset did you have to develop over time to be able to really adapt to that culture and that environment you were in?
Yeah, I even remember the first day I arrived on campus. It was interesting. I think I was wearing a Randy Moss football jersey and Tim's. That was a true New Yorker in me. But, then I started to meet some of the students, and, kids had khakis on, deck shoes. And I was like, I've never seen kids dressed this way. And, kids were rolling up in nice cars. And so for me, you automatically kind of understand that you're in a different space, right? I never heard sirens. The entire 3 years that I was there. I went in my sophomore year.
Wow.
And so for me, it was just a real awakening. And it was also a moment where I felt, for the first time in my life, I was very insecure, right? Almost you started to question whether you belonged, and like, is this for you? Like, similar to your point, right? Full of, probably a couple of hundred kids, and, probably 12 Black kids in my entire grade. And most of us was there because of sports. So there was a lot of stigma that, if you were a Black student or a student of color, you were there because you played a sport, right? And so that continues to be a lot of the stigma around prep schools. And so one, you're carrying that, like, you now have to prove yourself academically. But then I also knew, like, academically, I'm like, oh, coming from the school I was coming from, I'm not going to be able to keep up. And in fact, I got that first reality check. I had to write a persuasive essay. And I was, in my previous school, I was a B+ B student. And I was, okay, I could probably write. I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
And I remember him. He was a life changer for me, Mr. Marr. And he was my English teacher. And I remember he was giving out our scores, our grades. And he turned, like, teachers used to do this thing where they used to turn the page down so you don't know if it's a bad thing or it's just they don't want nobody to know what you got. I flipped the paper around over, and it was just red everywhere. It was like a D- at the top, and it said "see me," and I was like, "Oh, I'm definitely gonna see you," because I don't get D's. I was like, I've never gotten D's in a long time, right? And after class, I stayed. I said, "Mr. Marr, what is this?" And he was like, "You can't write, but that's okay. I'm gonna teach you how to become a better writer." And literally that following day, and I think for the entire year, I had to come to his class. So the school day started at 8:00, and I had to be in class from 7:30 to 8, and I would just have to journal. He would give me a journal prompt, and I would just write, and he would correct my grammar, make sure my sentences made sense. And I had to do the same thing right before football practice. So I would come 30 minutes before practice started and write. And, I thought it was really, like, at one point, I thought he was trying to embarrass me, but as I got to know him, he really, just was telling me, like, you have so much potential. I see your work ethic, but I just want you to make sure that you can write. And that's critical, right? And just, the world we live in. And I didn't know how that would play in my life, but I thank him every day for that. I ended up going on to perform in a speech competition and all that. And it was, just to summarize it, I just think about those moments I spent with him. And I was just the only student there. I was like, damn, this is like embarrassing. Like, why am I the only child doing writing prompts?
Right.
I couldn't write. And he wanted to make sure that I could before, he was done with me.
That's awesome. And man, that's almost unheard of now. I can think of, I've had a similar experience in high school where I needed additional tutoring, and my mom ended up getting me a tutor, and her name was Kirsten Maxwell. She changed my life. I'll never forget her. I always carry what she taught me, because I really believe she helped me become the woman I am today. Okay. So, man, those people that really helped us on our road and our journey are definitely people we'll never forget. So, like I said, you came from Wall Street. Like, tell us about that, Marvin, because I don't know if there's a lot of people that look like us on Wall Street.
Yeah, Wall Street started from design, from my prep school experience. In fact, one of my really close friends at that time, his dad was an investment banker. I didn't know what that was. So we had weekends where we can go off campus, and I wasn't able to go home as much except for big holidays. So I would go home to my friend's house, and, my first time doing that, I pulled up to his house. He was like, hey, bring your clothes. We're going to wash your clothes. All that stuff. I'm like, all right, cool. And I got to his house, and I'm just like in awe, right, about like his lifestyle. And I said, what do you, dad do, if you don't mind me asking? He's like, oh, my dad's an investment banker. Don't know what that is. And I said, oh, I'm aspiring to do that, right? I'm going to work on Wall Street. I was like, what does he do? And he was like, he reads the Wall Street Journal every day. I literally started just doing that. And because I thought that was the way to become wealthy or successful. And I was like, I wanted what the lifestyle that they had. And so I said, all right, this is what he does. I'm going to do that. And I just started to pursue that career pathway. And I got my first internship in prep school my senior year. I was 17. Wow. And I got it with a wealth management organization company in New York City. And the way I got that was my other classmate, his mom was the CEO of the private wealth firm, and management company. And so I sent this crazy email to her. It was like, hey, this is who I am. I worked at McDonald's. I worked at a factory where I wasn't supposed to be working. I was working with like ex-cons, and I was like, it was a Revlon factory. I stood up the entire time. It's the craziest thing ever. I would never put a kid through that. And I just told her my story, what I wanted to accomplish. And she responded, and she was like, I identify with a lot of the things that you shared. I too worked at an ice cream shop in Long Island, blah, blah, blah. And then the day of my prom, I got a call that I got an internship. And at that time, back in the day, I was getting every 2 weeks, like $900. I had a travel stipend. So in New York City, I had a Metro card that I got for free, cover my travel. And it was amazing for me. I had my own desk, and my job was to read the Wall Street Journal front to back every day, and then be able to summarize to my mentor, who was also my boss, like what I learned and key takeaways from the journal. And so fast forward to that, I just really felt like this could be a career pathway for me. Interned at a Wall Street firm every summer. So I was a part of like a couple of like really great career prep programs for students of color, Inroads, MLT, and ended up getting my first job offer from Goldman Sachs. And so that was my first.
So you went to the top of the top. You're not just gonna make any stops.
Yeah, I mean, I worked at Barclays for a couple of summers, and then I interned at Phoenix Investment Partners, and then got the big job at Goldman. And it was an awesome experience. I was a summer intern, and I got offered to be a full-time. And so at that time, I was going back to school already with a job. And so I was really, senioritis was definitely kicking in. Like, I'm secured, and it was cool. But, for me, I pursued that career pathway. And in 2008, the recession hits. So I lose my job, and I'm kind of like in this limbo of, what am I going to do else with my life? And I'm like, all right, this is all I've done.
Right.
So my best friend from prep school, Shantae Agard, she was a teacher in Brooklyn. So Shantae, when we were at Tabor, she always knew that's what she was going to do. She was going to be a teacher, hands down. And so she knows I'm out of work. So she calls me one morning and was like, hey, tomorrow you need to come. You ain't got nothing to do because you ain't got no job right now. You need to come and talk to these kids, the boys especially. And she's like, the boys don't take school seriously. and you come from where they come from, and there's not that many males in the education space.
Mm-hmm.
So you can inspire them to take school seriously and be successful and be able to overcome some of the challenges that they see in their community. So I ended up going to talk to the kids, and I stumbled on a chart that she had in her classroom. It had the boys on one side and the girls on the next. And the next to the names of the students was a number. I said, Shantae, what does this number represent? And she said, that's their reading levels. And it was a 5th grade class that I spoke to, and the highest number I saw for the boys was a 3. But,
wow.
And I knew at that moment, right, I stared at it for a long time because I knew what that meant, right? That those kids that I just spoke to, the boys that I spoke to, were most likely going to drop out of school, but even a worse situation, be involved in the criminal justice system. And it made me think about a lot of the things that I was fortunate to experience, like going to a prep school, going to a great college, Trinity College in Hartford, Connecticut, starting a career. My first career is at Goldman Sachs, the number one bank in the world.
Right.
And I said, how do I pay this forward? And it made me think about a surrogate father mentor that I had when I was at Tabor, Dr. McFarland, changed my life. And one of the things he shared with me as I was spending countless times with him on the weekends, like, Marvin, you're going to be successful, but I want you to always remember, as you climb up the ladder of success, always reach back to pull up another person. I kind of used to blow it off. I'm like, listen, I'm about to try to go make this money. Time for that. It was like, I wrote it off, but
yeah.
He unfortunately passed away of pancreatic cancer on my first day of work at Goldman before my birthday. And so for me, I was always in this search of, like, how do I keep his legacy alive? And when I was in that classroom, and I was like, oh yeah, this is what he's talking about. And so I went home that same day, and I sent a mass email to everybody on my contact list, and it landed on saying that I wanted to be in education, specifically to work with boys. And it landed on the desk of a principal that was compelled by what I was sharing and what I wanted to do. And he created a role for me. I had no certification, nothing, no experience. And he was like, listen, we can make some things happen for you, and you can work your way up through the organization. And that's in fact what I did.
So I hear there's so many things that I like, nuggets I want to pull from, but I think the biggest thing that I feel like we really need to emphasize on is the way you build relationships. And you don't just build, like, it's the intentionality of it and the longevity of it. So I want you to kind of dissect for me the importance of relationship building and how that's helped you pivot in your career and in your entrepreneur space.
Yeah, I think a lot of it I learned just going through the corporate experience, right? Just working on Wall Street, like, it's dog eat dog, right? That if I can give advice to young people in terms of where they start, if you can get a job on Wall Street, it will serve you well, because the foundational things that you learn are just going to be they're transferable to any industry, right? And you'll find yourself successful and also applying those skills that you learn early on. And so for me, on Wall Street, it was like, you had to build your network, right? That's how you got promoted. That's how people thought about you for new opportunities. And for us, a lot of us Black males who were analysts, right? You always idolized the brother that you saw that was a managing director, right? He was that dude, right? He came in with the pinstripe suit, Gucci loafers, Rolex watch, and you just would stare at them because you were like, that confirmed for you, like, I could do that, right? I could be there, and one day I'm gonna be there, right? And so for us, I used to just use lunchtime to build relationships with people, or coffee, and just send them random emails. I would look at the directory and, like, I want to meet this person. This is a Black person, a Black man, Black woman. I need to know, how did you do it in a corporate environment that there are very few of us, right? It's a very challenging experience. And so, I would have these coffee meetings, and one of the things I learned in a lot of my career prep programs like MLT and Inroads is that don't waste people's time. Like, if you are going to get an opportunity to meet with a senior person at a firm that is very busy and they're making this time for you, don't come with, tell me about your life story. What was this like? No, ask the questions that you need an answer to that you can't ask in your department, because it might rub somebody the wrong way, or they might not be willing to give you the cheat code on how to work your way up in an organization like Goldman or any other Wall Street firm or corporate firm for that matter. So for me, that's what I use those opportunities to do. And I think little did I know that I was actually building these critical foundational skills that have served me well in my space now, in my role now as a nonprofit leader, because, I think that's one of the things you see some leaders in this space in nonprofit, they got it or they don't, right? Or they have somebody that is better with the external facing stuff. And fortunately for me, I've come to, by the time I got to doing the work at 8 Million Stories, I came with both public and private sector experience. And that really has helped me be able to build and forge and maintain authentic relationships, mutually beneficial relationships, right? And so one of the things that I also learned from good mentors on Wall Street was like, don't just be taken and you're not reciprocating, right? So how do you extend the opportunity and say, how can I be of support to you or of added value to you? They might say you can't do nothing for me, right? You're fresh out of school, but to offer that, I think
just offer it up,
right? And I think that's just kind of like the way I do business now, right? I'm gonna, if someone gives me an opportunity and I see maybe a grant that's for another leader, I'm gonna tee that up for you, right? That's not my thing, but I'm not gonna say, oh, I'm not gonna share it. Hey, I think this.
So you don't gatekeep.
No, for what?
No, not at all. See, that's why you're my friend.
Karma has an address, so it's gonna come back to you.
Say it again.
So the energy you put out
is what you get back. So there's something you hit on that I don't want us to miss that point either, because you're just like dropping these nuggets, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going through our notes, but I'm like, no, just let them flow. Yesterday, me and you had a good conversation about the difference between a strong A and a strong B. And the importance of having that A person, which is that forward-facing person that's that go-getter. But then you also need that strong B person who's not necessarily forward-facing, but they can also get it done, but they might not be as strong as that A person. So can you break that down a little bit more for me? Because you just kind of hit on that. So I want to make sure we visit that a little longer.
Yeah, I think in every organization, right, as a leader, you build your roster and you know where people excel in, right? And so for me, I know where my leadership team members, what they excel in, and I try to do my best to put them in those positions where they're going to feel most confident and successful, right? And so empowering them. I'm not a micromanager. Like, you work for me, like, I'm giving you the full run. Make no mistake about it, you are accountable for the outcomes. So you don't get the job done, then you just know, hey, a conversation's coming. Right? So, for me, I do think not everybody's going to be the woo-woo and go to all the little lunches and all that stuff, right? Some people, that's not their thing. And I don't think they have to be a certain way, right? There's a space for them. And as a leader, you have to create that space, right? Put them in a position where, okay, you coming off the bench for this, because at this point, or for different types of people that you're trying to appeal to. So not every funder is into the woo-woo. Some funders want straight, right? And that's when you pull your B. My B's coming. They're not coming with no, how was your day? They're like, good afternoon, state their name, their role, and they go right into what we're doing. And that's good, because you complement each other, and you need people that are going to close some of your gaps. Like, I'm not an operations person. Like, that's going to be my ops person. I'm a visionary, right? And so I'm going to come to you midday, like, hey, we're about to do this. And you're going to look at me, probably say a bunch of things you want to say out loud to me, but you're saying them internally, right? But that's just me in my authentic space, right? I'm a visionary. I'm a creator.
Yeah, you're a true CEO. Yes.
I'm not getting in the weeds. That's why I got a team that is really good, and they do amazing work. Bianca and Skyra, in closing my gaps and my blind spots.
So that's good that you acknowledge that you have gaps and you have blind spots. So talk to me about being a high impact leader. So Marvin, you're not just in Houston. I've seen you in Essence. I've seen you on I've seen you in the Dorito ad. I've seen you do some really great things. So as you being such a high impact leader, how is that when it comes to you developing relationships? What does that look like?
I mean, I think it's, you gotta, I'm just very strategic in terms of like what I'm seeking, right? And I think for me, like, I'm always thinking about what's the best way forward for 8 Million Stories, right? How does it, continue to move move in the right direction without me having to be in the weeds all the time. So you have to build those capacities, and you have to look at partnerships and relationships that can help you do that. Right. And so how do we expand our reach as a small nonprofit in Houston, a big city like Houston, but has local and national recognition? And, be able to support the many students that need the services that we have. And so I have to be very strategic in leveraging and identifying assets that other organizations have that can complement my work. So, we have a lot of partnerships, and what I like to think of us as an ecosystem of support for young people. So it's like a hub where kids come in and get plugged into resources that can help address their specific need. Because not all of our kids have the same needs, right? And so how do you create an environment that I can get what I need and this other student can also do as well? And so as a leader, I am also looking at how is this partnership mutually beneficial? What do I have that they need, and what do they have that I also need? And then both organizations are winning. I think you're going to start to see a lot of that more in the nonprofit space.
Well, funding is going to be, you're going to have to collaborate for funding.
And I think a lot of funders want to see more of that, right? Yeah. And I think sometimes people make they have this belief that if you work with somebody else, it shrinks your bag, right? No, like funders might actually provide enough funding that it meets the financial needs for both organizations to do their work, successfully. And so for me, I'm not intimidated about other organizations. At the end of the day, I'm here on assignment, right? Amen. My work is about giving these kids an opportunity to dream past what they see in their communities. And if that means partnering with another entity, so be it, right? I don't need to be, 8 million stories is leading that. No, don't really have the time to do that, right?
Right.
It's about balance and working smart, not necessarily hard.
So you mentioned something else. You keep just dropping nuggets. I'm like, I want this, I want that. You mentioned something about not being in competition with other leaders. So I feel like you coming from Jamaica, Queens, like it's already like an aura you have about yourself, like an aura of just who you are and what you bring to the table. It's a confidence, but it's not an obnoxious confidence. So let's talk about your silent confidence that makes people want to do business with you.
Yeah, I think it's operating with humility, right? I think one of the things I learned in the early stages, I had a lot of I wouldn't say life-changing, but critical moments in my journey and just helping to get 8 million stories where it was now, right? We were $80,000 in the hole, no money for my salary. We were operating out of a small cottages on the Southwest side, piecing together furniture, and trying to make it work. And for me, that I wouldn't want that to change at all, right? I think some people are fortunate to walk into organizations where you have generous funding that allows you to just focus on building an organization for 3 years. First 3 years, the funding is covered. And for me, we didn't have that, right? So I had to build a program, show impact, and then also raise money to keep our lights on and also sustain, provide a lifestyle for everyone that was working under me, including myself. And so the humility, I think, I got humbled very quickly, right? And so I realized how hard the work was. I got more no's than yeses, right? I just think about like my journey. I was getting in my little car, my 2-door coupe, and driving around in a Mac computer, a hideous PowerPoint, awful. I mean, it was so bad. Black background, neon green font. Like, who is seeing that in a meeting, right? But in an entrepreneur, it all makes sense, right?
Right.
And you're looking at like, and I'm just holding this up, and I'm like, yeah, here is my student, such and such. Yeah, committed a couple of aggravated robberies, but here's the positive side. Right? It's like, man, this is going to be hard to convince people that I can keep this kid out of the criminal justice system, knowing that the work that we were doing or trying to disrupt was systemic, right? It was bigger than a small program like 8 Million Stories could tackle.
Right.
And so, for me, I'll fast forward, like I had a lot of people, and one person in particular, Gerald Smith.
Okay.
He's probably the most powerful, if not one of the top 5 most powerful Black men in the city of Houston. And I consider him to be a mentor and good friend. I had a chance to meet with him for a lunch and kind of, selling myself and just telling what I was doing. And I got an invitation to come meet him at his office. And we were just talking, going deeper into the work that I was doing and what I could use his help with. And he told me, he said, Marvin, one of the things I made a priority for me was to give people one meeting, because he talked about his journey to Wall Street and how as a Black man, nobody would give him a meeting. And he said when he got to a position of influence, that he would make sure that he would, never make someone else experience that. And I never forgot that, right? And for me, that said a lot to me, that this man whose office is in the Bank of America towers, your ears pop going to his office. Like you go on one floor and you think you arrive, you're like, no, we're going up another flight, and then your ears is popping into like nice carpet. And I'm like, oh, this is great. But he was so humble, right? And I just realized, like, and I made a note to myself. I was like, I'm gonna be successful leading this organization, and I'm gonna make sure that any upcoming entrepreneur, anyone that wants my time, I at least give them 1 minute, one meeting, right? Okay. Whether you get the second meeting, that's up to you. Again, don't be wasting people's time, right? Come with your intentions and build a relationship where it's mutually beneficial, where you're not just taking and you disappear. People are not going to give you that second meeting. But I just made it my business that I'm going to continue that, because he didn't have to do that for me. Like, what am I with my Mac computer and my hideous PowerPoint? He doesn't have the time to be listening to me, right?
So you bring up a good point that made me kind of think of someone that changed my life. So as you know, I came out of the finance background in commercial banking, for 15 years. Yeah. But I think about that journey, right, of getting to commercial banking. It was not something that was on my radar, but I was a single mom to a 2-year-old, and I didn't want to teach because I don't think I had a good attention span to be a teacher, and I just didn't want to deal with other people's kids. I was like, mine is enough. So I had an opportunity of meeting Vignette Matthews, and where I'm from, like I said, I'm from San Diego. There's not a lot of Black people in leadership. So seeing her as a Black woman with her red bottoms, her Range Rover, and just how kind and how she commands the room. When she walks into the room, there's such a presence and such an aura about her. I was like, I want to be like her when I grow up. So because of her, that's how I got into commercial banking. But like your mentor told you, and what she told me is, as a single mom, I had to show people that look like me who had children, because I had my daughter at 21, that you could still be successful, and not just show them, but show her. So I am a huge proponent for mentorship and sponsorship. And I think oftentimes we undervalue those relationships, because I'm pretty sure you still talk to Mr. Smith. I definitely keep Vignette posted on what I got going on, and make sure she's involved in what I have going on. And she's still somebody I pull on for resources and help. And she's all the way in San Diego, but it's about the longevity of relationships. So talk to me about, like, how is sponsorship and mentorship been for you, and how is that important in your growth, in your development of 8 Million Stories, and just you as a person?
I think it's something for me, like, again, the foundation of, what I learned when I was working at Goldman, like, never get comfortable, right? Stay ready, right? And you got to continue to be a student for the rest of your life, right? And so I love professional development. I never think I'm too good to learn something new from anyone, even members on my team, right? Like, they could always teach you something. And so I think that has served me really well. And I look at leaders across the country that have found success. Right. And I said, how do I, align with this person and get some insight that could allow me to be in a position to do the same thing? Because for me, I think about it as like this, like, the better I get, the better opportunities my students get, right? My kids get. I call them my kids, right? Yeah. Kids get, right? So the sharper I am as a leader, more doors I can open for those kids. Mm-hmm. And so I can never get content with just being an ED and going to lunches and kikiing. If I'm at a lunch, there is a reason I'm there. My happy place is in my office, working to help Taylor, on break generational poverty. That's the agenda, right? Because I know what I'm up against. I'm up against the streets. Yep. The temptations to make a poor decision because you're down on your luck. Yep. And 8 Million Stories might be taking too long with the resources. Yep. Right. So I've got to, figure out where's the back door, and I've got to always stay ahead of, like, the trends, right? And how do I continue to keep the kids that I serve at the forefront or at the interest level of a lot of our funders and people that could provide resources that could ultimately change their life. And so I have to always make sure that we are pivoting in the right direction to stay relevant and show that we are moving the needle. And it's hard, right? I'm touching the hardest population in the world.
Yes, you are. And my hat's off to you.
And they ain't easy, right? They're not
at all.
Hard. But when they get it, it's the most rewarding thing I've ever experienced.
I think I called you because I had the pleasure of doing some personal development over at Cashmere Gardens at a middle school over there. And I called Marvin because I was like, it was a culture shock for me. Yeah. And I was like, Marvin, am I going to make it? And he's just like, Alison, welcome to my world. And I was like, yeah, okay, let's go.
You just got to meet them where they are, right? And I think, a lot of people ask, what's your secret sauce with kids? I just meet them where they are and treat them the way you would want to be treated, or you would want someone to treat your kids. Right? You're not gonna catch me yelling at kids. I'm a burnout before they do. I was like, I'm old, right? And so I've got to, and at some point they're gonna tune that out, right? And you've lost the kid. And so I have to look at it as, what's the best approach that I keep them engaged? Most importantly, keep them coming back.
Right.
Because the minute they stop coming, something has taken their interest, and I might lose them, right? And so I have to figure out, what am I gonna say that's gonna land, where it's not like you talk like my mom or you talk like my granny.
Right.
And it's like, you're saying something that I never heard before. Right. I talked to them about my experience on Wall Street. I talked to them about, being 18 and seeing the first Black man in a suit in a Wall Street company tell me that people judge you from 12 feet away and the first 10 words out your mouth. Right. And so those lessons I instill in them, right? Because when they drop their little cuss words in class, I'm like, oh, here we go. Fun fact. And I go, people judge you from 12 feet away, and the first 10 words out your mouth, they're going to know how educated you are. So if you don't have another way of expressing yourself without using a cuss word, that means you have a limited vocabulary. And they look at me like, oh, I ain't never heard. I'm not telling you, oh, don't curse. It's just, what are we doing? Right? That's working for the kids that still want to go to school. Right. My Pookies and Ray Rays, right? You better come with something different, right? That they ain't never heard. Like that ain't gonna work. Oh, be disrespectful. Like what? I disrespect my mother. Like, what you? So what's the difference? Yep. Right. So you gotta be always. I think the work that we do, I think it's the hardest thing, right? You have to, because every day is not the same. And you have to be ready to respond immediately to things, and sometimes you get it right, and sometimes you don't.
No, but I really want to touch on that respect factor, because like I said, I was working at the school for a little bit. And one thing I feel like is missed in the educational system is the lack of respect. Yeah. The way they were speaking to the children. As a mother, I was disappointed. Yeah. And it hurt my heart, because I think of my 17-year-old. And if somebody was talking to her like that, I would be at the school every day, and they'd be tired of me, because you're not about to talk to my child like that. But I think having those educators like yourself is really the difference maker. That's what's going to help them see that, you know what, you don't have to talk to people crazy to get them to move intentionally. You can, like you said, meet them where they're at, but you don't have to speak to people any type of way. And I think that has been on my CEO journey, entrepreneurship journey, how we speak to each other, how we interact with each other. The intentionality of that and the respect of that. Like, people are so disrespectful to each other. And if we took the time to really try to respect the person's point of view, and it's okay to agree to disagree, but we don't have to belittle each other. And I think our society needs more of that, agreeing to disagreeing and just understanding the importance of respect. So with that being said, we really touched on some really great things, but there's some more great things that I want you to touch on, because what we talked about is your faith. And as long as I've known you, you are you're very strong in your faith, and you look fear in the face and you keep going. So tell us how that has helped you continue your journey, because it hasn't been an easy one.
No, I mean, I definitely think, how we started, definitely, I don't think we would be where we are right now without, definitely God's favor, and just my belief that, what we were doing was the right work, but most importantly, I was committed to the assignment that I was given, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
would stay committed to it until I had a clear sign that it's time to pivot, right? Still ain't never got that sign, but I think I remember like my first year leading 8 Million Stories. I was the last one to leave, and mind you, we weren't working out of this cottage on the southwest side, and then had one little street light. So if you left late, you were walking literally in the dark, and you're in the middle of a park. And I just sat in my car, and it was a pretty worn out day, and I sat in my car. And I just looked at the building, and at that time, it wasn't pleasant to the eye, right? I don't think it ever got pleasant to the eye. But I was literally sitting there, and I just like lost. I had an emotional breakdown. I said, God, you told me to do this, and I said yes, but you better send some help, because like I don't know how much I got left. I'm looking at this building. I'm like, who is going to donate to us when they're pulling up to this building? And I just continue to stay committed to that work, and it has worked out for us. And I think, for me, this past year has probably been the year that my faith has been tested the most. It's probably been, one of the things I talk to people about entrepreneurship journeys is how lonely it is.
Yep.
If you're doing it the right way, it's very lonely.
Mm-hmm.
If you ain't a yes man to everybody, if you ain't trying to create a little friends group where you got your people and people are not giving you the most honest feedback about like what you're doing and the decisions that you're making, you're not doing it the right way.
Correct.
And so just being in that valley for me was tough. I mean, I actually, this past month, I got an opportunity to go out to Arizona as part of this wellness retreat. I was one of 12 Black leaders across the country that was selected and funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to do this whole wellness retreat. And so it was an opportunity for us to just kind of unplug and kind of reflect on our journey. And one of the you could pick an excursion one day and just kind of do your own thing. And I'm really into ATVs and stuff like that. And so signed up to do that, got to the place, and lady was like, "Oh, you're ready for your self-guided tour?" And I was like, "What you talking about self-guided? I usually go on a trail with somebody leading the way." I was like, "Self-guided." So I said, "Okay, cool, self-guided." And so she said, "Hey, I'm gonna drop a pin on your phone that's gonna take you straight to the trail." So I'm on the main road with this side-by-side. And I'm like, what am I doing? And, it's slowing up traffic. It can only go like 50 miles an hour. So I'm like, I can't even accelerate with this thing. And so I finally get on the road. And she said, when you get to the destination, you're going to turn onto road 413. And you're going to just continue to follow 413. And you will know that you got to the end of the trail when you get to the river. And so at the time I turned into the trail, my phone is on 25%. And she also said, you're probably not going to get reception. So everything in that situation was telling me, oh, I'm not about to do this. Black man in the desert in a side-by-side by myself, phone on 25%. No one knows where I'm at. And she's like, just follow this road. And I'm like, there's 2 roads here. And I'm like, which one do I? So I'm just like, all right, I'm going to go down this one. And every time you saw the marker 413, you knew you were on your way. And I finally got to the, river, and it hit me like the following day that one of my students, it was graduation for our organization, and one of my students, I did not know this until I shared this exact same story with my kids, because I was trying to figure out a way to keep them committed, because I was like, you got to trust the unknown and embrace the unknown.
Mm-hmm. Wait, can we just sit in that for a second though, Marvin? Like you just dropped a whole word there. Like, we have to embrace the what?
Yeah, it was a tough thing for me, because I like to, be in control, have a plan ahead and a pivot if I need to. And I was like, I got to embrace that. I don't know if I'm going to make it through this trail or what. Maybe I get lost. What happens if I get lost? And so for my kids, I was telling them, like, because you got your GED and your vocational certification, life, it doesn't guarantee that you're going to succeed, right? You're going to continue to go through moments in your life where you don't know what the outcome is going to be. And I had to ensure them, like, at the end of the day, you just got to, stay steady, right? And instead of passing that work, look for the 413. And one of my kids who's now in the Navy, his grandmother and his mom was in the audience, and on his cap, his hat was Philippians 4:13. And so I'm sitting there talking about the story, and then the grandmother's like boo-hooing. I'm like, what is? I was like, this ain't that deep, right? And so I'm like, oh man, wow. And so it wasn't until the end of the speech that she was like, it's all making sense now. 4:13. I was like, Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I think for me, that was God telling me at the close of the year like you just got to stay the course, right? And when you're in that space of isolation, he's trying to probably get your attention, or you just need to go into that, isolated space to be prepared for what's
next. Come on,
elevation, because and it's all the signs point, right? Because he's like, where I'm about to take you, you thought the naysayers were there in the first 7 years of 8 Million Stories.
Right.
Just wait till what I got in store for you. You about to get it all from every direction, right? From people you never thought, right? Yep. Even Jesus himself, right? Had enemies around him that didn't believe. So you never know, and you got to stay closer to him more than ever. And I got to the end of the trail, and I just like started crying. I was like, yo, damn, I did this. Like, I right? I was like, all right, we good. And for me, I've never been afraid of like setbacks or challenges, because we started with a setback, right? Starting $80,000 in a hole, learning 2 weeks before you officially start the organization that they don't got money for your salary. That will freak you out.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But I embraced that. And I said, a no from a funder or a partner, it doesn't shake me. I said, I'll see you again.
Yeah.
And next time, it might be my time. I don't take it personal. I'm like, cool. See you next time, because I'm just going to get better. I embrace failure. I get excited about it because it's a comeback for me, right? It's just like, oh, you are questioning whether I can do something. I will show you, right? Who I am, right? And what I'm able to do, and, God's influence on my life, and that this is bigger than me.
Amen. Amen. So, oh my gosh, like, first of all, that was absolutely amazing. And I'm pretty sure that story in itself is going to bless so many people, because the fear of the unknown, that's pretty much entrepreneurship. You never know what your day-to-day is going to look like unless you have like an amazing schedule, but you just don't know. So embracing that fear of the unknown, and then the fact that you got that confirmation, hey, you're going in the right direction, keep going.
And I think and that's like for entrepreneurs, and not especially nonprofit.
Yes.
Like it might take a year before that thing takes off, right? And it's all about how bad you want it, right? If you don't want it that bad, you're gonna give up real quick. And that was one of the thing, early lessons I learned too in starting a nonprofit, where we didn't even have major outcomes yet. People were making an investment in you, right? So when you start your organization, whether year one or you just out there trying to get it, people are going to invest in you. So you gotta, when you present yourself to people, whether it's a donor or a partner, like you gotta bleed confidence.
Yep.
Right. If you are insecure, unsure, it's done. It's not happening, right? Because they gotta, whether they're gonna give you 5 or 10, they gotta know, like, all right, if I give Marvin 10,000 right now, is he gonna quit when this gets hard? Because it will.
Right. Oh yeah.
If you tell yourself this is gonna be inspirational post, I was like, don't read my post and think that's what it's all like. No, that's winning moments after the trauma that I've gone through, right? So believe that, right?
Winning moments after the trauma. I love it.
I'm like, believe that, right? And so it's like Dion, right? You look at his feet, and then he'll give him inspirational post.
No, but you know what though? That was a pivotal moment for him, because you think about how that's humbled him, because he probably would not be who he is today and be able to make as big of an impact if he didn't go through that foot situation.
And and God shows you, like, even our best leaders, he gonna show you at some moment that to go to the next level, you need me.
You got, and you got to
slow everything down. He'll shut closed doors. You're like, what? Why I'm always supposed to get this? He's like, no, I'm getting you ready for the next thing, and so I need to get you on a reset before we go into this next space, because the assignment won't get completed if you ain't locked in.
No, and it's a different level of, I would say, coming out of that corporate space to that entrepreneur space. It's a different level of focus. My focus, and I was telling, I'll probably get on her nerves, but I tell my daughter this all the time. I'm like, how bad do you want it? And that's the conversation we were just having. And she's like, really? And I'm like, you need to listen to me, because it's a sacrifice. Anything worth having, like really worth having, man, you got to sacrifice. It's not just going to, and if everybody was willing to do it, everybody would have it. And because everyone is not willing to do it, it's even greater sacrifice. But people often see the glitz and the glamour, but they don't understand the sacrifice and what you give up. Because I think one thing that you said that I really want to tie back in before our time ends up is the loneliness of leadership. True leadership is lonely. You don't have a lot of friends. You're very misunderstood. You don't have as much support. You have a lot of people publicly supporting you, but a lot of stuff privately, people don't want to see a leader bleed. You understand what I'm saying? They don't want to see your humanity. They want to continue to keep you in a certain light because everyone can't digest who you are at your core.
Yeah, it's a very lonely experience. I mean, I tell people all the time, I'm like, yeah, you get a grant here and there, awesome, celebrate it, but remember, you got to do that again.
Yep.
You got to get that again. That's where the flex comes, right? Get that again. Get that for 3 years.
Yep.
Right, because you're gonna celebrate those wins, but you also got to get right back to the grind, and so you never really get to, step back and look at the work that you've done. Because all right, got that, back to the next application because it's got to keep going.
Yeah. The
minute you slow down, you could lose it all. So it's a revolving door. It's not for everybody.
No.
And I'm grateful that God has put me in this position to do it, and the platform that I have, and I that's the commitment I made to people, to give them opportunities.
So I have a question for you because you recently got married. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
How did Bree help with that balance? Because what I can tell about strong male leaders, especially the ones that look like you, they don't understand balance.
Oh yeah, she was unapologetic about it too, that I had to develop that. I mean, I think, in the early stages of our relationship, she knew I was an entrepreneur, but it wasn't until we started living together, she was like, oh, this is all the time. I'd be on the couch and I was like, oh, this is a funder. I need to respond. And she was like, what? This doesn't turn off. And, there was tough moments, tough times, because I didn't understand how to turn that off. And I didn't think I could do both, make time for my home and then also still have impact as a leader. And I think, her non-negotiables really forced me to make tough decisions and adjustments. And I think that's something I tell a lot of leaders. I'm like, yeah, go out, go grind, but come up for some air and celebrate those things. And now I prioritize wellness. I'm all into, every quarter I go out and do like a solo retreat where I'm in the wilderness or I'm riding an ATV and I'm just clearing my head so that I come back charged and my frustrations or my stress doesn't bleed on my organizations or the people that I love. Like I'm able to say, okay, I got to step away, reset myself, come back, and people are seeing your best self, and you are able to operate in a high capacity. So she's seen a major shift. I don't even turn my laptop on when I come home. Like it's done. So that's why I tell people, I was like, don't be wasting people's time taking meetings, and you want me to tell you my bio. No, sir, no, ma'am. Because I'm giving you a critical 30 minutes that I could use doing something else.
You're so funny. But that is so true. And I think that's often something that this next generation kind of misses out because I get scrutinized because I don't do a lot of mentorships. But I'm going to be completely honest with you, and you probably understand this. It's the timing. I don't always have a lot of time to be able to sit down and fully mentor someone. So I kind of assess and see how bad you want it. And if you continue to make yourself, or I continue to see you, or other people are mentioning your name, then I'll kind of assess and be like, okay, this person I can give a little bit more time to because they're serious. So it's just knowing who gets your time and how much time you have to give, and just being honest with yourself about where you're at. So Marvin, you've got some really amazing things going on. Share with the people before we leave. What would you say your they say was? What has everyone told you couldn't do that you did? What has been your they say?
That I couldn't build a program for Houston's most marginalized kids. So kids who have been incarcerated, dropped out of school, teen moms, that I could not make them true success stories that people would respect. And so, I've continued to break those barriers, whether it's, sending off kids to college now or trade schools, supporting our kids with, just so many things, right? Like legal support. We have a generous donor that if our kids gets jammed up, like we can be able to provide quality legal representation for kids, right? That can really change the trajectory of their life, right? And so for me, I never forgot that, right? I remember when I first started, I had all these ideas, and I'm still that kind of person, right? Where I'm gonna come in a room, I'm just like, we about to do this. People look at me like, okay, and I'm like, you better find out.
True.
Like they're like, he's a dream. Oh, here he comes with a big old dream.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's your insecurity. That's not mine. That the reality, that's your reality, but it doesn't necessarily have to be mine. And so for me, I've never forgotten that, right? That how people see my kids. And I know even sometimes when people come and visit our program, they don't expect to see the certain things that they end up seeing.
Yeah.
I know what they think about my kids, and I make it my business to let my kids know what people think, and that it is up to them to reverse those assumptions.
Yep.
Right? I'm going to do that. I'm going to do my part.
Yep.
But you got to do yours. Otherwise, we don't change those assumptions.
And I can honestly say, as someone that has been to 8 Million Stories, it was clean. The staff was well put together. The kids were so kind, and you've done great work. So like I continue to tell you, I believe in your vision. I feel like it's only up from here. I'm happy to get before you blow up, right? Like I'm happy to just get this moment with you before you blow up and leave me. So I'm just grateful for this time. I'm grateful for everyone that got to learn about 8 Million Stories and just the great impact that you're making, not just locally, but we're calling it nationally and globally, because this program is not just needed in Houston. You're doing work that's going to change the narrative for generations and truly break generational curses and help people understand the importance of generational wealth. So I just want to thank you. Is there anything else you want to leave saying on your way out?
Continue to bet on yourself, So if you are watching this or you're going to watch this, you got an idea that you want to pursue, go for it. Our community needs it. Especially if it's something helping young people. You turn on the news every day, it's definitely black kids that we're seeing, right, committing crimes, and they're not bad kids, right? And I hope people believe that they're not bad kids. It's a lost generation that's being raised by people who have not healed, right? Parents who have not dealt with their trauma, have also been a product of unfortunate circumstances or situations and upbringings, and it's just a cycle that we're constantly repeating. And so we need more servant leaders out there addressing the problem and trying to take it on. And if people want to partner with 8 Million Stories, let me know. We always down for a partnership that's going to help break generational poverty for kids and change the narrative, because I just think kids growing up in Third Ward, Acres Homes, like those are the kids that I want to help, because I was one of them, right? I was one trying to figure out how do I dream past what I see in my community. And if it wasn't for schools like Tabor and great mentors, right, like Gerald Smith, where would I be today? And how do I continue to pay it forward? My heart.
I love it. Marvin, thank you. I am honored to have you as my first guest on They Say. We're going to keep the conversation rolling. Next week, I'm talking to someone I absolutely adore. She is a mother and she's in that corporate space. So just getting her insight, and we're just going to keep it going every Wednesday. So thank you guys for joining me. Thank you, Marvin, and have a great evening.
Likewise.